we have identified some very, very interesting anomalous type of aircraft.
Traffic is quite luminous and is exhibiting some non-ballistic motion. Over.
Move very rapidly at any speed or whether any direction it wanted to go. Fly could change and go to the right or the left or go crossways without hesitating a bit.
What do you think it was?
Well, if they call it a flying saucer, that's what it is.
EWA 517, do you want to report a UFO? Over.
Negative. We don't want to report.
Look, it wasn't my worst Wednesday night.
Good evening, everybody. This is Smiles Lewis, and you are tuned in to another live edition of Anomaly Now, straight out of Austin, Texas. It is Wednesday, September 27th, 2023, and this is the weekly live news roundup show for the 501c3 nonprofit Anomaly Archives based here in Austin, Texas. Thank you for joining me, and it is always a pleasure to have you join us, the Anomaly Archives, in our search for truth. Well, for our goal to preserve anomalous materials, whether they be popular literature, scientific research, or witness testimony, all these things that contribute to the oeuvre of anomalous experience, people witnessing and sometimes instruments recording anomalous events and weird happenings. So this is our little weird happening that we do once a week, where we do a quick news roundup of all the things that have come across our feeds, our paths here on this spaceship Earth, hurtling through space and the void. Thank you. Well, so we obviously usually start off with our reference to the website for newbies. If you are familiar with us, you can go to anomalyarchives.org and you can find out all about us. We've been here for 20 years. We were founded as a nonprofit in 2003. That's right, 20 years ago. And we're still going strong, even if we're in limbo with our collections and storage. But as always, I'm trying to remain optimistic. But you can go to our website and you can find links to all sorts of past material that we've done, including the links to past events, videos on our YouTube channel, our social media you can subscribe to keep informed. Oh, and yes, you can be watching this live show through the links there at our website. And we have a merch store, which might be going away soon, so you might want to go check that out. We'd appreciate your support. Buy some merch, get a shirt, get a coffee mug, get a mouse pad or a hoodie, all these good things. It's getting cold, right? Somewhere, maybe not here in Texas yet. And we put out an irregular email newsletter that you can subscribe to via MailChimp, or you can subscribe to it via the website. We post a version of it there as well. And just today, September 27th, we have posted our latest incarnation of the newsletter. Several other things, if you've been watching this show, you will have already been familiar with. We mentioned Anomaly-Con put on by Ryan Sprague, who has been put on at the beginning of this month a 2-day massive 10, 11 plus hour each day extravaganza of lectures on the paranormal and UFOs, and great stuff there. And yeah, so here is a glimpse of the most recent newsletter, all kinds of stuff that I have and have not talked about on this here podcast, vodcast, and some stuff that we'll be touching on here shortly. But it's a great little resource. Always something in it I guarantee you've never seen or heard of, and that you might find interesting. And of course, there you'll find links to our Flipboard. Oh goodness, did that just crap out? Hold on, here we go again. Yes, you can go to our Flipboard at flipboard.com/@Anomaly Archives. and it'll give you a link to the aggregator where we post all of the amazing stuff I come across. I can't post everything I come across. There's stuff I miss all the time. Some of that gets put into the newsletter because I'm like, oh wait, I forgot to put that in the feed. Oh, we'll put it in the newsletter and on the website. Articles I haven't yet had the chance to read. There's always something new over at Yahoo News. Mysterious antimatter observed falling down for first time. So some kind of the effect of gravity on dark matter, on antimatter. What? Crazy stuff. And something else I haven't had the chance to really dive into, and this is the mythology of the portal with physicist Eric Weinstein. There is apparently this new website called theportal.group, where it's a community of people collaborating around the ideas expressed by Eric Weinstein. So that seems pretty interesting. And I saw this claim of his having given a presentation called Sagrada Familia is a portal to interstellar space. Not sure what that's all about, but I know I've definitely heard people describe looking up at the tops of these cathedrals as if it were a portal, not necessarily using that word, into another realm, the realm of the mystical, obviously. And there's a ton of other news as usual. Speaking of Anomicon, Red Pill Junkie Miguel Romero has posted his individual lecture, Hermeneutics, Synchronicities, and the Ufology Tarot Project, which you can now watch separately on YouTube. It's about 50 minutes long, and he's posted about it at his website and also over at the Daily Grail YouTube channel. Fun stuff. Really dig Miguel's perspective on stuff, and think he, as always, has great things to bring to the field of ufology, especially when it comes from a visual and artistic perspective. All kinds of other podcasts talking about the mystery hum phenomena that I have not yet had a chance to listen to either. But as somebody who suffered through a period of time experiencing a mysterious, deep, bassy sound for, I forget if it was 16 days or so, it was pretty maddening, and it's a fascinating subject to dive into. And last week we mentioned the fact that Erica Luke's nonprofit Expanding Frontiers Research has launched a new digitized online collection, and there's some reporting over at the the Salt Lake Tribune .com. That's sltrib.com. Is the truth about aliens in this SLC archive? A Utah group is putting UFO docs online, so you can read about that. And catching up here towards last week's show, which we have linked to in the Flipboard. Man, I saw this news report on ABC News, and I just flipped my wig. Mom says microdosing mushrooms makes her a present parent, and they focus on mushrooms. And full disclosure here, when I was in high school and I first took mushrooms, I believe I tripped on mushrooms before actually ever getting high on THC, marijuana, pot. And one of the person I was buying it from, the bags always came with a pre-printed backgrounder on Teonanacatl. I'm probably mispronouncing that, but this idea of the flesh of the gods, this idea of the mushroom being a sacred plant that allowed access to these psychedelic realms and all this inner intuition and insight and consciousness expanding experience. And certainly it did all that for me and so many others. But one of the other things it talked about was how natives used it in small doses, basically as a natural speed. And having experimented with that way back in the day, having read about it as a teenager, not advocating that be done by any underage people, but it absolutely worked. It was it seemed like a natural high, natural speed, and a natural upper that just was unlike any of the negative things that you typically identify with those kinds of things, uppers and speed and so forth. Make of that what you will. Not advocating it, just reporting my personal experience from many, many years ago. And just to see ABC News talking about this and focusing on mothers, and, well, you might want to check out the video. It's pretty interesting. Meanwhile, U.S. Customs and Border Patrol have released a bunch of quote unquote UAP videos that really don't look that interesting at all. You can find links to that over at Mick West's metabunk.org website, as well as John Greenwald's Black Vault has downloaded and reposted all of them on his YouTube channel. The only one I've really looked at, some of them have already appeared, and you may have, if you're really a deep diver into all this, you probably will have already seen it. But the one I looked at looked like it was at a border crossing and just seemed like it was a balloon. Granted, the balloon did some things that made me go, ooh, is it intelligently controlled? Is it some kind of Chinese spy balloon that's only this big? Who knows? But again, nothing that really astounding or interesting. Why then am I reporting on it? Because people get excited about this stuff, and it's for you to judge. I offer my observation and insight, such as it is, and you can take it or leave it. Well, you may have seen, as I was skimming by, references to the passing of author and conspiracy theorist Ken Thomas, and this has hit me pretty hard, as well as some close personal friends in the para communities. I mentioned, I did it again. You're clicking the wrong button, Miles. Let me reshare that. Right. So in the latest newsletter, the September 27th issue of the Anomaly Archives e-news, among the things that I talk about is the passing of Ken Thomas. And here is a photograph taken on the Natchez riverboat when the Paramania crew in 2018 came together for the annual migration, and we had a great time. And as I say here, it is with great sadness that we report the passing of legendary conspiracy researcher and zine publisher Ken Thomas. We've known Ken since the 1990s. He was to be one of our honored speakers at the ill-fated 2001 National UFO Conference here in Austin. In this photo above, I finally had the chance to meet Ken in person at the 2018 Paramania party aboard the steamboat Natchez in New Orleans. Ken will be greatly missed. And there pictured is Ken in the middle, and Tim Banal there on the right, and then my grinning face there. I was just so excited to finally meet him. It's breaks my heart that it took that long, and like so many things in life, there are regrets, but we had kept in contact. I believe I'd spoken to him either right before this or right after this. I just have this memory of being at the last physical Anomaly Archives location amongst all those books, and talking to Ken on the phone and just catching up and just seeing how he was doing. He was going through a rough time then. And yeah, so in 2001, I was hosting the National UFO Conference. He was going to be one of our esteemed speakers. I, of course, knew him from the 1990s zine scene, as mentioned previously. We have not many links yet, but we do, of course, have a web page for Ken. And that's the other thing. He and I have the same birthday. We were both born June 12th, him in 1958, me in 1971. We share that date, as we often liked to lament, with George Bush Sr. Yeah, there's no accounting for us weirdo Geminis, that's for sure. But yeah, there's a number of photographs there, and I'll go through a few more here in just a minute. Of course, kind of the unofficial obituary writer for people in the para community is Lauren Coleman, legendary cryptozoologist and parapolitical researcher. Most folks may not know that, but he has long focused on things like the many, many mysterious deaths surrounding the JFK assassination. He's also well known for the copycat effect, writing on this strange social contagion phenomena that first manifested as suicide clusters, a book that he wrote back in the 80s, which then morphed into the kind of rampage shootings and other types of copycat crimes that we unfortunately see just way too much of in our present United States and around the world. But he has collected a lot of photographs of Ken over at his Copycat Effect blog, and written a tribute and obituary to Ken, who was a librarian and archivist at I believe a Missouri University. That's probably it right there, and that is of course where his papers, I believe, have been donated in the last several years as he was retiring. Well, he'd retired quite some time back, but so you can see a lot of these wonderful photographs. There's Ken probably at Giant Rock in California with Paul Kimball, and this collage that Lauren put together of all the people who had passed before Ken that he was good friends with. Here in the top left, you have Jim Mars, the Texan conspiracy researcher, proceeding clockwise, Skylar Alphagren, who of course we're talking about last week, who passed in August of 2021, and proceeding around the clock directions, Charya S., who wrote a number of books, I believe, on the subject of Jesus and conspiracy stuff about religion. And of course, the amazing left-wing conspiracy god, John Judge. And just so many great pictures of Ken. Here's another one of him and Acharya, another one with Skylar, I believe, in like 2005. Much older photograph with him and Greg and John Downs and Nick Redfern and this fellow here, I believe out in Sedona or somewhere out in a red rocked desert. And just lots and lots of old photographs with Greg Bishop and Robert Sterling being the publisher of conformist.com, and Greg Bishop, of course, being a longtime friend and writer, publisher of so many awesome things. Just he knew everybody, and he was such a great dude. Again, pictures with David Hatcher Childress, so many others. Legendary, nay, infamous conspiracy researcher Sherman Skolnick. And of course, there's a good old crackpot historian, Adam Gorightly, and I believe that's Tim Cridland. I hope I'm not mispronouncing your name, Tim. And of course, Tim Banal, another photo from the Natchez steamboat in 2018. And yes, lots of pictures with Ken and Lauren Coleman when they were together many moons ago and touring around different interesting locations, including parapolitical oriented locations. And one of Ken's ex-wives wrote a very nice tribute to him that is worth your time. Yeah, Ken just seemed like a really wonderful, warm, generous fellow. He published a number of different books, the last one being Trumpocalypse Now, The Triumph of the Conspiracy Spectacle. And of course, he was mentioned in that recent New York Times op-ed that I and others were interviewed for as part of a larger conspiracy-oriented research project. Well known for his zine, Steam Shovel Press, and whatnot. Just lots of great stuff here. And of course, Greg Bishop writing over at his Radio Misterioso Facebook group that Ken was one of his best friends, and talking about how they first met in the 1990s at a UFO convention in Los Angeles, and how they spent time together at Giant Rock and other places, and how in 2017 Greg had visited him in St. Louis with his late wife Sigrid, and they had arranged Ken had arranged for them to go on a paddle wheel boat on the Mississippi to observe the solar eclipse, which is about to happen and come across Texas next month. A lot of more great photos here. There they are at, I believe that's William Burroughs' grave. Just some great stuff. I will play a little bit of this video here that was from that Paramania at Jim Garrison's grave. Just a short clip of it. This is actually video that Tim Banal shot and has posted online before. Let's see if we can get this going here. Chris like there's all these letters that he wrote to the early Saucer magazine, right. And he was chiming in with all the the Darrow underground,
Shaver?
the Shaver mystery stuff.
The first thing we hear of Chrisman in public life is he had letters published by Ray Palmer's
Ray Palmer,
Amazing
yeah.
Stories, and supposedly he fought the Darrows in the caves of Burma. So, and also he appears. Somebody interviews him briefly for a story on the very first science fiction convention in a magazine called Harper's Weekly.
What's strange was, and then fast forward 30 years, you have the spy on the bridge, James Donovan, doing the exchange for the guy that Gary Francis Powers.
Oh, right.
And
And Powers also dies in a mysterious helicopter crash.
yeah,
So the whole clip is available online on Tim's Facebook page, I believe, and of course archived in the Anomaly Archives. The connections between the JFK assassination and the early UFO, the rise of the flying saucer phenomena here in the United States, there are very strange connections, and Ken was one of those people who pursued that, much to the dismay of both camps. You know, the UFO people didn't want to talk about JFK, and the JFK people didn't want to talk about UFOs. Nowadays, that's pretty much a very common mainstay. Though the folks who are trafficking in that information often aren't even aware of the connections that Ken Thomas had established. And I really didn't know Ken as well as I would have liked, but he will absolutely be missed, and I just want to share a few more photographs. Some of these you've already seen that were from the pages we just covered, but this was at the Paramania 2018 again. There's Ken. We're all at a brewery there having a pint or two. Much love around that table that day. And more photos from that Jim Garrison cemetery plot. And just Ken, always with the shades. And again, the picture with him and John Judge, legendary lefty conspiracy researcher. Oh, I love this photo of Greg and Ken, taken by Sigrid, I believe. And Ken looking almost like the Unabomber out in the desert with crackpot historian Adam Gorelli at a UFO conference. And a great picture. This is that's Peter Stencil back in the left there. One of the other founders of the Excluded Middle magazine that Greg Bishop and Robert Larson did back in the 90s. In fact, that's Acharya holding up what was then the latest issue of Excluded Middle, and Ken making some pointed remark. And then, of course, a very, very young Robert Sterling there in the back. And another young photo of Robert Acharya and Ken crossing the street. This picture I think you saw earlier of a bunch of folks. Bunch of them. What a crew. What a crew. Probably here at Giant Rock. And oh yes, there's another very young Skylar there at that pub. A few years later, Skylar and Ken, and a great panoramic shot of us there at Jim Garrison's grave, listening to Ken Thomas hold court on the JFK assassination. Yeah. Good times. Good times. Well, I will also comment, and I guess I should link to it, that it was just a few weeks back that I became aware of the podcast QAnon Anonymous that I have a kind of a love-hate relationship with. I think they do good work, and they certainly seem to be proving plenty of conspiracies left and right, but they just have this temperament where they just have to make fun of everybody. And when I saw that they were doing an episode on Ken Thomas, I kind of cringed out of concern. And sure enough, there was definitely some cringy stuff in there that made me upset with them. And but at the same time, again, I think that they offered some good retrospective analysis and perspective on some of the things being talked about. Mostly it was focusing on the octopus conspiracy and the Inslaw software promise case, all of which had long lasting tentacles of the octopus into the future. Is it worth your listen? Maybe, if you are really into all this stuff. I certainly was glad that I listened to it, and I will continue to listen to their episodes, even as I sometimes have to shake my head and go, why do you have to be so dismissive and derisive of people that have different views than you? Some other recent passings that I meant to acknowledge. Okay, now stop with the pop-ups. And actually, it was I'd seen this previously, and I've been forgetting to mention this, but Carol Rainey has passed. And if you don't know who Carol Rainey is, Carol was one of the wives of legendary, infamous abduction researcher Bud Hopkins, one of the people who most promoted and popularized this idea of UFOs being connected to alien abduction. Bud Hopkins and Whitley Strieber, both competing for the top bestseller book at the time on the subject of UFOs. And Carol passed, I believe, I'm not sure the exact date yet, but this post was from September 18th from her daughter. And I didn't really know her, but I became really interested in Carol when back several years, I guess it was around 2014, she really started speaking out on her ex-husband's research abilities when it came to the UFO scene. And Jack Brewer over at ufotrail.blogspot.com back in February 2014 published Carol Rainey's open letter to the UFO community, where she voiced many of her complaints and concerns about the nature of her former husband's research abilities. Now, this was, of course, I guess 3 years after Bud had passed, but I do still think this is very important information that gives perspective on Bud Hopkins. And of course, Bud Hopkins, my friends and I always joked about the fact that here was an abstract artist who just had to read into the UFO phenomena from a materialist, literalist perspective. He did not seem to have any room for nuance or abstract or symbolic approaches to the phenomenon. We'll provide a link to that. Of course, Wikipedia documents that, he was another Gemini, Bud Hopkins, June 15th, 1931, passed on August 21st, 2011. And I believe his obituary here in the New York Times back in 2011 cites, of course, Carol Rainey, and also mentions, I believe, the companion he was living with or spending his life with at the time, that being Leslie Kean. Yes, that Leslie Kean. That's another thing a lot of people don't realize, that besides one of Bud's ex-wives coming out criticizing his interpretation and ability to investigate the claims of the abductees he was working with, were his relationship to Leslie Kean, who goes on to launch this latest 2017 onward media blitz UAP campaign that we are living through now, and who some people criticize is masquerading as a unbiased journalist, when in fact she's really a tried and true UFO believer, and who has also gone on to believe and investigate things like spiritualism and life after death and afterlife and spirits and that sort of thing. None of which I'm criticizing. I think it's good to know these things. Meanwhile, there's also this link to arch debunker Robert Schaefer's article from the Skeptical Inquirer, in which the title says it all: "Abductology Implodes," where he talks about the exposés of Emma Woods, who gave her testimony exposing the terrible research, quote unquote, practices of David Jacobs, the other most prominent, actually, Professor Jacobs, who had up until that point been more of a history professor, but who turned into alien invasion advocate and abduction researcher and was performing hypnosis over Skype and telephone and doing some rather unsavory things, requesting some unsavory things of some of his research subjects. And in this article, Robert Schaefer goes on to mention the second punch, besides Emma Woods and her testimony. One I was not at all expecting comes from Carol Rainey, the ex-wife of Hopkins. Upon reading the Emma Woods could count, she jumped into the fray, and he gives quotes from her, I'm guessing from that same letter to the UFO community. She also posted, I believe, she was a documentarian and posted a number of videos to her YouTube channel about all of this. We'll try to put the links to all of this as usual. And just jumping back to our Flipboard, you can find so many other interesting articles there that might hold your attention. So check that out. I'm still really, there's so many things I need to catch up on here, but we really appreciate your taking the time to talk to others about these subjects, and hopefully like and subscribe, ring the bell, all that stuff to become notified of material or upcoming shows, that sort of thing. If you want to subscribe, you can do so through a variety of ways, including there's audio versions of this podcast that you can find over at the website. Actually, I should go back and show that. Where is that? If you go to the Anomaly Archives website, there is a link over on video, Anomaly-NOW, and that'll take you to the directory of where we post all the past links to all the past shows. And there's all these different podcast ways you can subscribe to. Whatever your preferred podcatcher is, you can probably find a way to subscribe to the audio version of this. Of course, the video versions are archived at our YouTube channel, but there's so many other ways to listen to the show. So that's going to be it for tonight. Thank you all for joining us. There's some other friends who are going through some tough times, and if you're at all inclined, maybe you can send your positive energy to them. There's always somebody needing our help, and if you can't help directly, I do think positive vibes and energy can have a good effect. So maybe send some positive energy out to the world. There's all kinds of places that need it. So good night, everybody.